Ever get that feeling like something big is about to happen? Like when you see ripples on a still pond, you know something's coming up from below.
Yeah, you could just sense it.
Exactly. And that's the vibe I'm getting with this whole Zydus Lifesciences situation, them being a huge player in pharmaceuticals and all.
Right, major name.
But now they're taking this big leap into medical technology, like acquiring Amplitude Surgical out of the blue. It's definitely making
Oh,
waves.
absolutely. It's a bold move for sure. And to really break down why this is so significant, we've got this insightful research update from Motilal Oswal.
Okay, perfect.
You can think of it as like our roadmap for this deep dive. We're going to unpack this whole acquisition, figure out why Zydus is suddenly so interested in surgical implants and stuff, and try to see what it all means for them going forward. I think you'll find some pretty cool insights when we start connecting all the dots in this report.
All right, so let's dive in. First things first, for those of us who aren't, knee deep in hip replacements every day, what exactly is Amplitude Surgical all about?
So Amplitude Surgical, they're a French company, and they've really carved out a niche for themselves in the world of lower limb orthopedics.
Yep.
They develop and market all these high-end products, and we're talking hips, knees, even those smaller joints like your foot and ankle.
Interesting.
And get this, in France, they're a major player, like number 2 when it comes to knee prostheses and number 4 for hip prostheses. So yeah, they're a pretty big deal already, a well-established name.
Wow, so this isn't just Zydus picking up some small, startup. This is a real player. Now let's talk numbers. What's the price tag on this acquisition? What are we looking at here?
All right, so the report lays it out. Zydus is buying 100% of Amplitude. And the price, a cool EUR 300 million, all cash. That's about INR 28.5 billion for you. Now, this is going to happen in 2 stages. First, they snag an 85.6% stake, paying EUR 6.25 per share. And then they gobble up the remaining 14.6% at the same price. All in all, they expect to wrap this up by June 2025. Oh, and they've already got the paperwork rolling, filing the offer with the AMF. That's France's market regulator, kind of like our SEC here.
So they've got a clear plan and timeline, huh? What about the valuation, though? How does this price compare to what Amplitude is actually worth?
Yeah, that's always the key question, right? So based on the deal, we're looking at a valuation of about 4 times Amplitude sales over the past year. And if you go by EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, the valuation is more like 15.7 times their earnings over the past 12 months.
Okay.
That gives you a pretty good sense of how much Zydus is willing to shell out to get a foothold in this whole medtech space. They clearly see value in Amplitude.
For sure. And how is Zydus planning to actually pay for all of this? Are they dipping into their savings, taking out loans? What's the deal?
Looks like a mix of both, actually. The report says they're using a combination of internal accruals, meaning their own cash, and some external financing.
Oh, okay.
So a bit of both, which, is something analysts always keep an eye on. It's generally a good sign that they're not just relying on debt to make this happen.
Makes sense. Now, Amplitude must be doing something right to be such a hot commodity. What's their financial track record been like?
They've been doing pretty well. For the 6 months leading up to December 2024, their sales were up 5% compared to the year before. And their EBITDA margin, a healthy 25.4%.
Not bad at all.
No, not bad at all. If you zoom out a bit, you see their revenue has been holding steady at about EUR 106 million, and their EBITDA has been growing at a decent clip, like 5% on average each year over the last 5 years, ending June 2024. Also worth noting, about 60% of their revenue comes from knee-related products and 33% from hip-related products. So yeah, they're really focused on those major joint replacements.
It's good to see they have a clear focus, and a successful one at that. Now, aside from their financials, what about their physical assets? Are they bringing anything else to the table for Zydus, like facilities or infrastructure?
Oh yeah, definitely. They've got a manufacturing plant, which right now is running at about 60 to 65% capacity.
Yeah.
Plus, they have an international logistics center. So yeah, those are pretty valuable assets that Zydus can leverage as they get into the whole manufacturing and distribution side of the medical device business.
So it's not just about the brand name and the products. They're getting some real tangible infrastructure as well.
Absolutely. A solid foundation to build upon.
Right. Okay, so now that we have a good grasp on Amplitude, let's shift gears and talk about Zydus. Why are they making this move? What's the bigger picture for them? What's the strategy behind this whole medtech expansion?
Well, the report makes it clear. This acquisition is all part of a bigger plan for Zydus. They're serious about building a global presence in medtech. They're looking at cardiology, nephrology, and now, as we see, orthopedics with Amplitude. They're not just dipping their toes in the water, they're diving headfirst into this sector.
That's a pretty diverse set of areas within medtech.
Right. And it makes you wonder what they might go after next. But if we look at the bigger picture here, we know Zydus has been focused on a few key things in their pharmaceutical business, like establishing themselves in the U.S. generics market with a strong portfolio, pushing for those day-one generic launches, coming up with innovative drug delivery systems in India, and building up a pipeline of biosimilars, vaccines, and totally new chemical entities. So they've got a lot going on already. But now, by adding Amplitude to the mix, they're opening up this whole new avenue for growth in medtech, alongside their existing pharma strengths.
So they're adding another tool to their belt.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about broadening their reach in healthcare, addressing more needs.
Right. It's smart diversification,
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly. And this report actually dives into those broader markets, giving us some valuable context on the whole medtech and orthopedics landscape, both globally and specifically in India.
Okay, good. Because I was going to ask about that. So what are we looking at? How big are these markets?
All right, so let's start with the global medtech market. As of 2024, it's estimated to be worth a whopping USD 510 billion.
Wow.
It's been growing at a steady 4.9% each year, on average from fiscal year 2016 to 2024. And going forward from 2024 to 2030, they're predicting it'll grow even faster at about 5.7% per year. Now, when you look at the market share, the Americas are the big players, holding about 45%. And then you got India, which is still relatively small at 2.3%, or USD 12 billion.
But growing rapidly, I imagine.
Oh, you bet. That's where things get really interesting. The Indian medtech market is poised for some serious growth. Projections show it could reach USD 50 billion by fiscal year 2030, growing at an average rate of about 27% per year. That's huge.
That is huge. What's fueling this growth?
A few things, actually. The Indian government is really throwing its weight behind this sector with initiatives like the Production-Linked Incentive Scheme, or PLI for short, which has a significant amount of funding earmarked for it. And you've also got the overall evolution of the Indian pharma market, which is creating a ripple effect. Plus, there's a big dependence on imports in India right now for medical devices, something like 80 to 85%.
Wow.
So there's a massive opportunity for domestic players like Zydus to step up and fill that void.
So lots of untapped potential in India for sure. Now, what about orthopedics specifically? What kind of numbers are we talking about there?
Okay, so globally, the orthopedics market is currently valued at around USD 45 billion as of 2024. It's been growing at a decent pace, averaging 3.7% annually from 2016 to 2024. And by 2030, it's projected to reach USD 60 billion, growing at about 4.1% per year. Now, within orthopedics, knees and hips take the lion's share. Those two areas combined make up about 31% of the entire market.
That's significant. So Amplitude, with its focus on knees and hips, is right in the sweet spot of this growing market.
Right on the money. They're perfectly positioned to capitalize on this trend. And there are several factors driving this growth. Things like constant advancements in technology leading to better implants and surgical techniques. Then you've got demographics, with an aging global population driving up the need for joint replacements.
Right. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, it's a big factor. Plus, you've got rising healthcare spending worldwide, which helps, and a regulatory environment that's pretty supportive of innovation and quality.
Yeah.
And oh, one more thing the report mentions is the rise of robotic-assisted surgery. It's becoming a big deal, with all the major players investing heavily in it.
It sounds like a pretty dynamic and competitive landscape. So how has Amplitude been navigating this? I know the report mentioned they've been making some strategic moves. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Oh, absolutely. Amplitude hasn't been sitting still. They've been actively pursuing a strategy of vertical integration, and they've done this through some pretty key acquisitions. Like in April 2024, they acquired Orthodontix, which was a distribution company, and even before that, they were gradually increasing their ownership in Sofab Orthopedi, a manufacturing company. They started investing in them back in 2016 and finally took full control in 2023. And then let's not forget their acquisition of the Stellar range, which is a line of knee and hip implants from Evolutus back in 2022.
So they've been pretty busy on the acquisition front. What's the idea behind all of this? What do they gain from vertical integration?
Lots of benefits, actually. By bringing these different pieces of the puzzle in-house, they're essentially strengthening their whole supply chain. They get more control over the products they offer, more control over distribution, and in the end, it helps them reduce costs and just become more efficient overall.
So it's about streamlining their operations and having a tighter grip on the entire process.
Exactly. And they didn't just acquire companies. They also made a strategic divestment. In 2023, they sold off their Novastep business, which focused on extremities, surgeries, specifically foot and ankle. By doing that, they could really double down on their core strength, which is those lower limb orthopedics, especially given their strong market position with knees and hips in France.
So they're really laser focused on what they do best.
Yeah, no distractions. And it makes sense, especially considering what's been happening in the broader orthopedic prostheses market. The report actually touches on this trend of consolidation, where you have bigger players merging.
Right.
Now, this might seem counterintuitive, but this consolidation actually creates opportunities for companies like Amplitude. You see, when these big companies merge, they often end up discontinuing certain product lines to avoid overlap. And that creates gaps in the market. Gaps that Amplitude, now with the backing of Zydus, can swoop in and fill. It makes them even more competitive,
Yeah.
which, probably made them even more attractive to Zydus in the first place.
That's an interesting point, how consolidation can actually create space for others to grow.
Yeah, it's all about those market dynamics. And to really understand Amplitude's position, it's helpful to look at the market share in France, where they're a major force.
Good point. Let's do that.
Yeah.
What does the market share data tell us?
Okay, so for knee prostheses in France, the top 5 companies hold about 60% of the market.
Okay.
Zimmer Biomet leads the pack with 20.8%, but Amplitude is right behind them at 14.9%. So they're a strong number 2.
Very strong.
And for hip prostheses, those top 5 companies account for about 49% of the market. Surf takes the lead with 15%, and Amplitude is sitting comfortably in 4th place with 8%. So you can see they've really carved out a solid spot for themselves in a major European market.
So Zydus isn't buying into some risky venture. They're getting a company with a proven track record and a real presence in the market.
Exactly. Now, what does all of this mean for Zydus? Well, the analyst makes a few interesting observations. They say that while Zydus's move into medtech is definitely a long-term play, and it's going to take some time to really see the financial impact of these ventures, like the Amplitude acquisition, they do expect Zydus's main pharmaceutical business to stay pretty stable in terms of earnings over the next few years, like from fiscal year 2025 to 2027.
So a stable core business while they build up this new medtech arm?
Yeah, precisely. And they point to a few reasons for this stability. One is the ongoing competition in the generic Revlimid market, which was putting some pressure on earnings.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, Zydus is actively working to strengthen their product pipeline, so that's a positive sign.
Always good to have a strong pipeline. What else is the analyst watching out for in terms of Zydus's growth?
A few things, actually. Zydus is focusing on launching generic versions of products that don't have much competition right now, like G-palbociclib and Griot-Sigwet. Those are expected to boost their earnings between 2025 and 2028. And they've also got a promising pipeline of new drug applications, or NDAs, in the works. Things like CUTX-101, Serogledazar, which targets a specific liver condition, and Unsaflast. These are all expected to contribute to growth in fiscal years 2026 and 2027. And let's not forget their biosimilar and vaccine pipeline. They've got over 25 biosimilars, including 3 antibody-drug conjugates, which are a big deal, and over 20 vaccine products at different stages of development.
So it's not just about Amplitude. They've got a lot cooking on multiple fronts.
Absolutely. Lots of irons in the fire. So taking all of this into account, the big question is, what's the analyst's final verdict on Zydus's stock? Should you buy it, sell it, or hold on tight?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Well, they're giving it a neutral rating, which basically means while this acquisition is seen as a positive strategic move for the long haul, the immediate impact on earnings is likely to be pretty stable.
Yeah.
The full effect of this medtech expansion, well, that remains to be seen. It'll take time to play out.
Right. It's a long game, not a quick win.
Exactly. Patience is key here.
All right, so let me see if I can summarize all of this. We've got Zydus, a major pharma player, making a strategic leap into medtech by acquiring Amplitude Surgical, a company with a solid foundation and a good market position in Europe, especially France. This move aligns with Zydus's long-term growth strategy, leveraging the significant potential of both the global and the rapidly expanding Indian medtech markets. Amplitude brings its expertise in orthopedics, specifically knee and hip replacements, which are major segments within that market. And while the short-term financial impact might not be dramatic, the long-term implications are pretty huge, especially with Zydus's already strong and diverse pharma portfolio.
Spot on. It really highlights how these lines between pharma and medical devices are blurring.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you wonder what other surprises are in store for the healthcare industry. Like what other unexpected partnerships or acquisitions might we see down the line? And what will it all mean for patients and for innovation as these two worlds, pharma and medical devices, become increasingly intertwined? Something to think about for sure.
Definitely something to ponder. It's a whole new era for healthcare, and who knows what exciting developments are just around the corner.
I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But in the meantime, keep an eye on Zydus. They might just be the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, I agree. This could be a game changer for them and for the industry as a whole.
All right, well, that's a wrap for today's deep dive. Thanks for breaking it all down for us.
You got it. Always a pleasure diving into these reports with you. Until next time.
Until next time.